Ladies and gentlemen, every once in a while, the world gives us a mind that operates on a frequency so high it almost burns through the limits of human endurance. A mind that sees 10 years ahead of everyone else, that feels compelled to rewrite the rules of civilization itself. And yet, behind every such mind, there exists another force, quieter, subtler, almost invisible, that keeps that chaos from consuming itself. It's the unseen balance that allows brilliance to remain human. Tonight, I want to talk to you about that balance. About the woman who, in ways few understand, holds steady the storm of genius. When you study human behavior through the lens of neuroscience, you quickly realize that intelligence is not just a gift, it's a weight. Extraordinary intelligence, paired with relentless ambition, creates an inner dissonance. The mind becomes a battlefield where creativity and exhaustion constantly collide. And for those who live at the extreme edges of innovation, like the man we all know reshaping energy, space, and artificial intelligence, this dissonance can become nearly unbearable. What most people don't realize is that the human brain, no matter how advanced, is still bound by the same fundamental principles of emotional regulation. The prefrontal cortex drives logic, planning, and creativity, while the limbic system fuels passion, fear, and emotional depth. When these two systems fall out of harmony, genius can become self-destructive. But when balance is restored, when emotional grounding re-enters the equation, that same mind can produce miracles. Now imagine living with that level of internal fire every single day. Imagine waking up to thousands of messages, urgent crises, impossible goals, all before breakfast. The brain of such an individual doesn't rest the way most of ours do. It doesn't slow down. Dopamine surges at the prospect of creation, but the cost is chronic stress, disrupted sleep cycles, and emotional volatility. This is not dysfunction. It's the price of an unrelenting drive to build the future faster than time will allow. And yet, in the center of that storm, something, or someone, must act as a stabilizer, a neural counterweight, if you will. Neuroscience tells us that emotional regulation is often mirrored, that the emotional tone of one person can recalibrate the nervous system of another. This phenomenon, known as limbic resonance, explains why some people can walk into a room and calm everyone down without saying a word. Their nervous system emits a kind of coherence, an order that others subconsciously align to. In the life of a man whose days are filled with chaos, mechanical failures, launch explosions, market pressures, political noise, the woman who balances that chaos serves as a kind of living equilibrium. She doesn't just bring peace, she brings alignment. Her emotional stability provides the neural feedback loop his mind can't generate alone. She becomes, quite literally, the biological regulator of genius. People often think of love or partnership as an emotional construct, something soft, romantic, maybe even distracting. But when you examine it under the microscope of neurochemistry, you see it's one of the most advanced, stabilizing mechanisms evolution ever created. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, acts as a modulator for stress. It reduces cortisol, the primary stress hormone, and promotes trust and connection. When a high-performing brain, one driven by dopamine and adrenaline, is anchored in oxytocin-rich interactions, it finds homeostasis. That's what I believe happens when this woman steps into the life of a man whose genius is equal parts beauty and burden. She becomes the mirror that reflects calm back into chaos. She doesn't tame him, no one could. But she brings coherence to the parts of his mind that oscillate between galaxies and grief, between invention and isolation. Think of the way stars exist, nuclear chaos contained by gravitational order. Without that balance, they either collapse or explode. The same is true of the human psyche. The gravitational pull of love, understanding, and empathy is what keeps even the most brilliant minds from imploding. For someone like him, whose daily reality involves decisions that could alter humanity's course, this emotional gravity is not optional. It's essential. When I've studied brain scans of highly creative individuals, a fascinating pattern emerges: their default mode networks, the brain regions associated with imagination and introspection, are hyperactive even at rest. That means their minds never truly stop creating. But creativity without rest is unsustainable. Without grounding, it leads to burnout, irritability, and a distorted perception of time. It's why so many innovators, artists, and leaders live on the edge of mental collapse. What makes the difference is not their intellect, it's their environment. The presence of someone who understands not just the person, but the rhythm of that person's mind. Someone who knows when to step in and when to step back. Who knows that silence, at the right moment, can heal more than any word. That kind of understanding can't be taught. It's felt. It's empathy in its purest form. This woman, the one who balances his chaos, doesn't compete with his vision. She amplifies his humanity. Her role is not to challenge his mission, but to remind him of the world beyond it. The simple, unengineered world of presence, touch, laughter, and breath. Because when you strip away the rockets, the algorithms, and the headlines, even the most brilliant mind still needs one thing above all: connection. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called co-regulation. It refers to the process by which two people's nervous systems synchronize over time. When one partner operates at an extremely high frequency, alert, anxious, constantly problem-solving, and the other operates at a slower, more grounded frequency, the two eventually meet in the middle. The relationship becomes a dynamic balance of speed and stillness. It's what allows high, functioning individuals to remain tethered to something real, something human. Without that, the risk of emotional dissociation becomes immense. Many visionaries lose themselves to abstraction. They fall in love with ideas more than people. But the truly great ones find someone who reminds them that love itself is an idea worth protecting. That's what balance does. It reintroduces the soul into the circuitry. And if we look closer, this isn't just a story of two individuals. It's a blueprint for human evolution. Because as technology accelerates, as artificial intelligence begins to outpace human comprehension, our greatest challenge won't be speed. It will be balance. The balance between creation and care, between logic and empathy, between what we build and what we feel. This woman, in her quiet strength, represents the future antidote to our modern condition. In her ability to balance chaos, she teaches the rest of us what emotional intelligence truly means. It's not just the ability to understand emotions, but to regulate them, within ourselves and within those we love. When I talk to colleagues in neuroscience about people like him, they often focus on the brain's brilliance, the neural efficiency, the executive functioning, the pattern recognition. But rarely do we discuss the cost, the emotional erosion that comes from living at the edge of cognitive overload. For every visionary who changes the world, there's a hidden story of someone helping them stay whole enough to do it. And that's where her story begins. Not in the spotlight, not on a stage, but in the quiet moments between crises. In the way she looks at him when he's lost in thought. In the way she says nothing when words would only make things worse. In the way her presence anchors him back to the reality of being human. There's a line of research that fascinates me deeply. It's about the effect of consistent emotional stability on creative output. Studies show that when high-performing individuals experience consistent emotional support, their cognitive flexibility increases by up to 30%. They're more capable of divergent thinking, the ability to generate multiple solutions to a single problem. In other words, love makes the brain more creative. And maybe that's what we're really seeing, not just rockets and revolutions, but the neural signature of a love that balances chaos. That balance is not passive. It's active, deliberate, and deeply intelligent. It requires emotional discipline to hold space for someone whose thoughts move faster than conversation itself. It requires intuition to know when silence is strength and when softness is strategy. Because balancing chaos doesn't mean resisting it. It means moving with it, without losing your own center. You see, in neuroscience, there's a concept called entrainment, the tendency of oscillating systems to synchronize with one another over time. It's the same reason fireflies light up together, or why two pendulum clocks on the same wall will eventually swing in rhythm. The same applies to people. When two individuals share space long enough, their biological rhythms, heart rate, breathing patterns, even microexpressions begin to harmonize. For someone whose nervous system runs at the speed of invention, being with a person whose system radiates calm can literally reshape brain activity. It's as if her steadiness becomes the metronome to his symphony of chaos. There's something profoundly human about that, because in the end, no matter how far we reach into the stars, we remain biological beings, tethered to the physics of feeling. Every rocket launched, every electric engine designed, every neural interface created, it all originates from a body that still needs touch, rest, and love to survive. That's not weakness, that's design. Evolution built emotion, not as a distraction from intelligence, but as its ultimate safeguard. And maybe that's why every era's most relentless innovators eventually find someone who brings them back to earth. Leonardo had his confidantes, Einstein his silent muses, Tesla his unfulfilled longing. Each genius in some way sought equilibrium, someone who could translate their lightning into language, their obsession into peace. It's not romantic idealism, it's neurobiological necessity. The more extraordinary the mind, the more extraordinary the balance required to sustain it. What makes her presence even more powerful is that she doesn't try to understand everything. That might sound strange coming from a scientist, but sometimes comprehension isn't the goal, connection is. To truly balance chaos, you must be willing to coexist with mystery. She knows that not every silence needs to be filled, not every mood needs to be fixed. She trusts the process of his mind the way you might trust a storm to clear the air. That kind of trust is rare, and it's earned only through depth of character. When you observe her interactions, those subtle micro-behaviors, you see mastery in motion, the gentle deflection of tension, the timing of humor, the use of pause instead of pressure. Each action modulates his brain chemistry in ways no algorithm could replicate. A well-timed smile releases oxytocin and serotonin. A calm tone lowers his cortisol levels. A brief touch on the shoulder increases dopamine. Together, they create a living feedback loop of balance, a neural duet where one regulates the other. And yet, balance does not mean absence of conflict. In fact, healthy balance requires friction. Think of the gyroscope that stabilizes a rocket. It doesn't eliminate motion, it channels it. Similarly, she doesn't suppress his intensity, she helps him orient it. She challenges his thinking without destabilizing his focus. Her empathy is paired with intellect, her patience with precision. And so their dynamic becomes not a battle of opposites, but a partnership of polarities, a human equation that sustains creation. Sometimes, late at night, when the world sleeps but his mind doesn't, she's the one who reminds him that not every idea must become a company, not every failure is fatal, not every silence means surrender. That grounding presence isn't about control, it's about coherence. The brain performs better when it feels safe. The nervous system resets in the presence of love. Those moments of quiet human connection, what I call micro-sanctuaries, are where true innovation is reborn. Let's zoom out for a moment. Across studies in neuropsychology, the pattern repeats behind every breakthrough lies a system of emotional stability. It may come from a mentor, a parent, a partner, but the pattern holds. Human beings are not designed to sustain high-intensity cognition indefinitely. We need recovery cycles, and love, real stable love, is the most powerful recovery mechanism known to science. It restores the parasympathetic nervous system, enhances memory consolidation, and improves creative insight. Now imagine what that means for someone like him. His entire life operates at the intersection of physics and destiny. He carries the emotional load of nations, markets, critics, and dreams. And yet, in the middle of that unimaginable chaos, there exists one person who brings the entire system back to human scale. She doesn't stop his storms. She becomes the eye within them. There's something profoundly humbling about that. Because we often celebrate the builders of rockets, but rarely the builders of resilience. We measure success by inventions, not by the emotional ecosystems that make invention possible. But if you want to understand human genius, you must look not just at the intellect, but at the environment that protects it. Every great mind needs an atmosphere, one filled with oxygen, patience, and care. Without that, even brilliance suffocates. In one of my research studies, we monitored the neural coherence between partners during periods of high stress. When one partner maintained calm breathing and soft vocal tone, the other's amygdala activity, the brain's fear center, dropped significantly. The brain waves literally began to align. What we discovered was revolutionary, but beautifully simple. Love changes brain waves. It's measurable, repeatable, undeniable. So when I say this woman balances chaos, I'm not speaking metaphorically. She alters the physics of his brain. Now, consider the inverse. When chaos goes unbalanced, the same neural fire that builds rockets can burn through relationships, health, and peace. The thin line between brilliance and breakdown isn't talent, it's balance. Every neuron that fires toward the stars must eventually rest in the arms of something human. That is the rhythm of genius. Expansion and contraction, ascent and return, creation and connection. And maybe that's the deeper story here. Not just about him or her, but about all of us. Because whether we're building rockets or raising families, writing code or composing music, we all live with our own forms of chaos. We all need someone or something that steadies our hands when the world feels too fast. Balance isn't luxury, it's survival. The woman who balances chaos is, in truth, the archetype of balance itself. She represents the capacity of love to regulate genius, of stillness to empower motion, of empathy to guide intellect. And when you look closely, you realize that she's not just balancing him, she's teaching him, silently, how to be whole. Because in the end, genius is not about knowing everything. It's about feeling deeply enough to connect what can't be calculated. And for that, we need each other. Imagine for a moment the human brain as a symphony, billions of neurons firing in rhythm. Creativity is the crescendo, logic is the melody. But what keeps it all together? The tempo, the timing, is rhythm. She is that rhythm, the invisible pattern that allows the music of his mind to make sense. Without her, it's noise. With her, it's harmony. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the true essence of balance. Not the absence of chaos, but the mastery of it. If there's one lesson this story offers the world, it's that even the most extraordinary minds need ordinary moments of grace. The ones where time slows down, where laughter replaces pressure, where silence feels safe. The world doesn't often see those moments, but they're the foundation of everything else. Because behind the rockets, the headlines, the companies, and the code, there is still a human heartbeat, and someone listening to it closely enough to keep it steady. And that, perhaps, is where genius truly lives, not in the technology we build, but in the people who remind us why we build it. Thank you.